Hey guys, my name's Vaughn. Today I'm going to show you how I recreated the iconic Skrillex growl, specifically from the song Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. So here we have the original, and then here we have what I recreated using FM8. Unfortunately, I can't say I was able to do this all by myself. I actually pulled a lot of inspiration from the YouTuber Bleeve, I think it's pronounced, and he was able to recreate the growl using stock only FL Studio instruments and effects. So I want to create this video for the Ableton users out there who are curious to know how to do the same idea but within Ableton. I primarily used FM8. It doesn't really matter what synth you use, honestly, because um, a lot of the sound is created using post-processing. So it's really how you use the effects on the original signal to create the sound. Also, make the sound with Serum at the end of the tutorial, but I'm primarily going to use FM8 because that is what I assume Skrillex used at the time. So here within FM8, I have this pretty simple patch. I have the F oscillator going directly out of FM8 at 100%. And then I have what's mainly creating the sound is this E oscillator going into F. And this is what is being modulated in Ableton. So here is the curve I created. It's adjusting the level here, and it starts at 100%, goes down to 54 at this point. Around the middle, it dips down to the lowest point, which is 47, and swoops back up to 52%. And then around 3/4 of the way through, we get to about 68% up, sustains there for a bit, and then swoops up to 82% by the end, because if you listen to the growl, it swoops down, also in pitch, but also rises back up a bit right at the tail of the sound, and then creates a normal sounding growl by the end of the sound. So like it swoops down, but then it is able to retain the growl information at the end right here. That's why I pitched it back up a little bit. Right here, within D is a square wave at the ratio of 2. And also the E oscillator is at the ratio of 1, while the main F oscillator is at ratio of 2. This D is a square wave because as I was creating the sound, I wanted to give an extra bit of brightness within the sound. So I put the level at 2 going into E and the level at 10 going into F. And I think that gave it that right sense, that added to the timbre in the right way to emulate the original. So then after that, I created a pitch. Using Little Alter Boy. The sound pitches down, and as you hear in the original, pitches down and then goes up a little bit at the end. Just a smidge, just ever so slightly. So the MIDI note is at F#1 and pitches down to 11 semitones by the end of the sound. So like the MIDI note starts at F1, but I have it pitched up to about, let me pull up Little Alter Boy. At the start, starts at almost 5 semitones. I did this by ear, so it doesn't matter what number you use. I would adjust it by ear if you want to emulate the sound yourself or take it in a different direction. I have it pitched down to 0, and then about a quarter of the way through, it pitches down to -11 semitones, and then pitch back up a little bit at -6.5. And then after that, I created a low pass filter to around 1,000 hertz. I did that because as I was creating the sound got way more squelchy than the original, and just by rolling off the highs, I was able to get it sounding a lot closer to the original. Added a vocoder here, have the dry wet at 27%, bands at 16, and I opened up the range to the highest and lowest range so it can capture that full frequency spectrum. I think this rounds off the sound a little bit, especially later on once you put the compressors on. Let me turn off all the effects here so you can hear how it sounds. It should sound like this at this point. I also added a dynamic tube. I've been watching the Caracol's project Patreon recently, and he uses dynamic tube a lot. And his explanation is that it, instead of using other saturations to square off the sound, he uses it to it almost like bends it into a triangle shape, so there's more room for compression later on. You can saturate the sound however you want. I figured this worked really well for this sound. And then this is what really creates the sound, especially later on once we add the compression. So what I did was added these peaks. This creates the vowel, that nasally, vicious growl within the original sound. I have a peak at 1018 hertz, another at 1067 hertz, and another at 2440 hertz. And it should sound like this. I added a Bitcrusher on to the sound. It isn't really influencing the sound that much. I just did it because in Bleeve's tutorial, he used a Bitcrusher, and I was hoping maybe it would add the timbre of the sound, but honestly, it's not really doing all that much. I wouldn't sweat this part. I added an erosion because when I was compressing the sound, it needed a little bit extra high end to brighten up the sound a little bit, especially since I low passed the sound at the beginning of the chain, so it needed some extra high end. Sounds like this. And then this is where we start to get the compression onto the signal. I added 4 OTTs all at 100%, and then I have the time at 200. That's just how I have it at default because it helps minimize the tail at the end. Sounds like this. That's getting a lot closer to the original Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites Growl. I also added a glue compressor for the to get the volume back in the sound. And then you hear that terrible tail at the end. So I used the utility just to cut it off right at the end. And then since it has gone through so many OTTs, I used an EQ at the end to kind of round off the tops a little bit just because the high end is getting a little too crazy. And then I also added some peaks to keep on emphasizing the vowels in the sound. And then I did a final EQ at the end just to roll off the super, super lows, lower than 30 hertz, and then dipped down the mids and highs a little bit, and then gave the sub a little extra boost. And that is how I recreated the sound. I also threw a kick in there just to hear how that would sound when comparing it to the original, and sidechained it accordingly. And yeah, that is how I made the sound. Here's also what I did within Serum. It's not exactly the same. It sounds very similar, so I wouldn't stress too hard about getting FM8 if you can't afford it. Although I highly recommend getting it because it's a very harmonically rich synth that still holds up to this day. I don't think a lot of synths even compare to FM8 in that regards. So I recommend it. I know Plugin Boutique, they have it on sale sometimes, like every couple of years, for about $10, which is like an insane deal. That is like, you cannot get anything better than that. Seriously, that is too good. I'd say it's worth the 200 some odd dollars I paid for it, but If you could get it for 10, that's cool. So if you don't have FM8 and you have Serum, this is how you make it within Serum. Here I have a basic sine wave being FM'd from another sine wave, have the level down here. And then I have the FM knob being automated in a similar way, but not the same way as the FM8 one, because the FM8 or the FM knob within Serum gets a little wild sometimes. So I just got the same automation and just tamed it a little bit. Within Ableton, you can adjust the same automation, but like squeeze it down a little bit, using these pulling marks on each corner of the automation lane. So also it sounds like this. A little bit more squelchy if you like that. And then I also added this sub and have the have B being modulated by the sub, which is then modulating A. I think to make it more accurate to the FM8 patch, I think you should have this up an octave, because the original signal's up an octave, but play with the octaves accordingly. I didn't play around with this patch all too much. I just kind of whipped this up for the sake of the tutorial. But that I think is generally how that is the general sound if you were to do that within Serum. Nothing within the effects as well. No, nothing in the matrix. So yeah, that's how I made the Skrillex growl within Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites using Ableton and FM8. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and share any thoughts on how to get the sound even closer. You have any ideas that you think would help the sound? So yeah, that's all I have for today. You guys have a nice one. Peace.